Kate Morrison wiped the sweat from her forehead and stared at the cargo manifest on her datapad. Another 12-hour shift in the freight processing levels of Nexus Station 7. The numbers blurred together after a while. Container 4457B, destination Kepler Sector. Container 4458C, holding Bay 17. The work was mind-numbing, but it paid well enough to send money back home to Earth. She pressed her palm against the scanner and watched the massive cargo container float past on its magnetic rail. The station hummed with constant activity day and night, though those terms meant little in deep space. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species moved through these lower levels, loading and unloading goods from across the galaxy. Kate was one of maybe 30 humans on the entire station. Most aliens found humans interesting, in the way someone might find an exotic pet interesting. She had learned to keep her head down and avoid attention. Some species saw humans as weak. Others saw them as curiosities from that strange death world called Earth. Either way, attention usually meant trouble. Her communicator buzzed. Kate pulled it from her belt and smiled when she saw the message. Danny would arrive tomorrow, her little brother, finally coming to the station after 6 months of paperwork and waiting for his work contract to process. He was 19 now, eager to see the galaxy, full of the kind of optimism that Kate had lost somewhere between Earth and here. She typed back quickly. See you tomorrow. Stay close to the main corridors when you arrive. Don't wander. Kate knew Danny would probably ignore that advice. He always did. But she had to try. The next day came faster than expected. Kate stood at the docking bay entrance, watching the transport ship settle into place. The airlock cycled open and passengers began streaming out. She spotted Danny immediately. He was taller than she remembered. His face lit up with excitement as he took in the alien architecture around him. Kate. He dropped his bag and pulled her into a hug. She hugged him back harder than she meant to. You made it, she said, pulling back to look at him. How was the trip? Incredible. There was this Thaxian family in the cabin next to mine, and they taught me how to play their card game. Well, I think it was cards. The pieces kept changing color. Danny grabbed his bag and fell into step beside her. This place is amazing. I saw at least 6 different species just walking from the ship. Kate led him through the corridors toward the residential section where she had arranged a small apartment for him. It's different down here than up in the tourist levels, she said. You need to be careful. Some areas are safe, others aren't. I'll show you which is which. You worry too much, Danny said, but his tone was affectionate. Someone has to. They spent the evening in her quarters, a cramped space barely big enough for a bed and a small table. Kate made them food from the limited supplies she kept on hand. Danny talked about home, about their parents, about the friends he had left behind. Kate listened and tried to remember what it felt like to be that young and hopeful. Your shift starts in 3 days, she reminded him. Until then, stay in the safe zones. I marked them on your datapad. The lower cargo levels can be dangerous, especially for humans. Danny nodded, but she could see he was only half listening. His eyes kept drifting to the viewport, to the stars beyond. Kate sighed. He would learn, one way or another. 3 days later, Danny started his job as a dockhand in the lower cargo levels. Kate had pulled strings to get him assigned to a safe section, with supervisors she trusted. He messaged her during his lunch break, excited about the work, about the aliens he was meeting, about everything. That was the last normal message she received from him. 3 days after that, Kate was halfway through her shift when her communicator buzzed with an unknown sender. She almost ignored it. Unknown messages usually meant spam or scams. But something made her open it. The video file started playing. Kate's blood went cold. Danny was tied to a chair in a dark room. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, blood crusted on his lip. He was alive but scared. Behind him stood a figure Kate couldn't quite make out in the shadows. The video cut off. Another message appeared. Just coordinates and a time. 1 hour from now. Kate didn't think. She grabbed her jacket and left her post. Her supervisor would be angry, but she didn't care. Nothing mattered except getting to those coordinates. The location was deep in the lower levels in a section she had always avoided. The lighting was poor here and the corridors were narrow. She passed groups of aliens who watched her with interest. A human alone in this area was unusual. She kept walking, her heart pounding but her face calm. The coordinates led to a reinforced door. Kate knocked. The door slid open. Inside was an office that tried to look legitimate but failed. The furniture was expensive, but the room had no windows. 2 guards stood by the walls, both Krillian. Their 8 limbs twitched as they watched her enter. Behind a large desk sat another Krillian, older than the guards, with scars along his scaled neck. His eyes were cold and calculating. "Kate Morrison," he said. His voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "Please sit." Kate remained standing. "Where is my brother?" "Safe, for now." The Krillian gestured with one of his hands. "My name is Vexthor. I run certain businesses in this sector. Your brother made a mistake. He wandered into an area he shouldn't have. He saw things he shouldn't have seen. He's 19. He didn't mean any harm, perhaps, but harm was done nonetheless. He owes a debt now." Vexthor leaned back in his chair. "However, I am a reasonable being. I am willing to transfer that debt to you." Kate's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "What do you want?" "I run an entertainment venue. Fights. Beings pay good money to watch combat between different species. It's all legal, of course. Volunteers only." His smile showed too many teeth. "I want you to volunteer. You want me to fight. 5 matches. Win or lose doesn't matter. Just fight. Do that and your brother goes free. Both of you can leave the station if you wish. I'll even pay for your transport." Vexthor pulled up a holographic contract. "Refuse and your brother's debt will be settled in other ways." "Unpleasant ways." Kate stared at him. Her mind raced through options. She could go to station security, but they were famously corrupt in the lower levels. She could try to find Danny herself, but she had no idea where he was being held. She could fight back right now, but the guards would stop her before she reached Vexthor. "Why me?" she asked. "Humans are rare, exotic. People will pay to see a human fight. They'll want to see if the stories are true." Vexthor watched her carefully. "I've heard humans come from a death world. That your planet tried to kill you at every turn. That you had to be strong just to survive. But looking at you, I wonder if those stories are exaggerated." Kate met his eyes. She thought about Danny tied to that chair, beaten and scared. She thought about the years she had spent training back on Earth, in gyms where broken bones were common and quitting meant shame. She thought about everything her body could do, everything she had learned to do when pushed to the edge. 5 fights, she said quietly. 5 fights. And then Danny goes free. Both of us, you have my word. Kate knew his word was worthless, but she also knew she had no choice. "Show me proof he's alive now." Vexthor waved a hand. One of the guards activated a screen on the wall. It showed a live feed of a cell. Danny sat on a cot, his hands bandaged. He looked up at a camera and gave a weak thumbs up. Kate felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. "When do I start?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. My people will collect you from your quarters." "Come alone." "Tell no one." Vexthor's smile widened. "I'm looking forward to this. It's been a long time since we had a human in the ring. The last one didn't last very long." Kate turned to leave. At the door she paused and looked back. Vexthor was already working on his datapad, dismissing her from his attention. "You asked if the stories about humans are exaggerated," she said. Her voice was soft, almost conversational. "I guess you'll find out." She left before he could respond. That night, Kate sat in her quarters and tried to prepare mentally. She stretched, moving through the old routines her trainers had drilled into her. She ate a careful meal, protein and carbohydrates. She checked her body for any injuries or weaknesses. Her hands were calloused from work but strong. Her reflexes were still sharp. She thought about the fights she had been in back on Earth. Mixed martial arts competitions in small gyms where the rules were more suggestions than laws. She had won most of them. She had learned to read opponents, to find weaknesses, to push through pain that would make others quit. But those had been human opponents. She had no idea what she would face tomorrow. Kate lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling. She didn't sleep. She just waited for tomorrow to come. The next evening, a knock came at her door. 2 Krillian guards stood outside. They didn't speak, just gestured for her to follow. Kate grabbed a jacket and went with them. They led her deeper into the lower levels through corridors she had never seen. The sounds of the station changed here. Louder, rougher. She heard shouting in languages she didn't recognize. Eventually, they reached a large converted cargo hold. The space had been transformed into an arena. Raised platforms surrounded a central fighting area. Hundreds of aliens filled the platforms, drinking and laughing and placing bets. The air smelled of sweat and something else. The Saurian charged immediately. He came at Kate with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight, his clawed feet pounding against the metal floor of the ring. The crowd roared in anticipation. Kate moved. She didn't try to meet his charge. That would have been suicide. Instead, she stepped to the side at the last possible moment, turning her body so his momentum carried him past her. Her hand shot out and grabbed his arm as he passed, using his own speed against him to throw him off balance. The Saurian stumbled but recovered quickly. He spun to face her, more cautious now. He circled to the left. Kate moved with him, keeping her distance, watching his feet, his shoulders, his eyes. She was reading him the way she had been taught to read every opponent. He lunged forward with a claw strike aimed at her face. Kate ducked under it and stepped inside his reach. This close, his size was both an advantage and a weakness. He was strong, but he was slow. She drove her elbow into his ribs, right where the armor-like skin was thinnest. The impact sent pain shooting up her arm, but she felt him grunt. The Saurian swung wildly. His fist caught Kate in the shoulder and sent her spinning away. She rolled with the momentum and came back to her feet. Her shoulder throbbed, but nothing was broken. She had taken worse hits in training. The crowd's laughter had stopped. They were watching now with real attention. This wasn't going the way they expected. Kate and the Saurian circled each other again. He was breathing harder now, frustrated. She stayed calm, her breath controlled. She had learned long ago that fights were won in the mind first and the body second. Stay calm, stay focused. Find the weakness there. He favored his left side. The rib shot had hurt him more than he wanted to show. And his eyes? They weren't protected by his thick hide. Neither was his throat. The Saurian charged again, roaring. Kate waited until he was almost on top of her, then dropped low and swept his legs. He was too heavy to fall completely, but he staggered. Kate was already moving, coming up behind him, her arm snaking around his thick neck. She locked in a rear chokehold, not the kind that crushed the windpipe, the kind that cut off blood flow to the brain. The Saurian thrashed, trying to throw her off. His claws raked her arms, drawing blood. Kate held on. She had trained for this. She knew how long it took. Just a few more seconds. The Saurian's movement slowed. His strength faded. After 10 seconds, he went limp. Kate held the choke for 2 more seconds, then released him and stepped back. He collapsed to the ground, unconscious but breathing. The arena was silent. Kate stood in the center of the ring, blood dripping from the cuts on her arms. Her knuckles were bruised. Her shoulder ached. But she was standing. The fight had lasted less than 3 minutes. She looked up at Vexthor's box. He was leaning forward, all 8 of his limbs tense. His expression was hard to read, but Kate thought she saw surprise. The crowd began to react. Some cheered. Others made sounds of confusion or anger. Bets had been lost. Expectations had been shattered. Guards came and dragged the unconscious Saurian from the ring. Another guard gestured for Kate to return to the holding area. She walked back down the ramp, her legs steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her body. In the holding area, the other fighters stared at her in silence. The Thaxian who had mocked her earlier said nothing now. His eyes followed her as she returned to her cell. A medic came, a small insectoid being who prodded at her injuries with thin fingers. Kate sat still while the medic applied some kind of gel to her cuts. It stung at first, then went numb. The medic left without speaking. Kate leaned back against the wall of her cell and closed her eyes. 1 fight down. 4 more to go. Then Danny would be free. She had to believe that. She had to hold on to that. Hours later, long after the crowd had dispersed and the arena had gone quiet, Vexthor came to see her. He stood outside her cell, looking at her with his cold reptilian eyes. "Impressive," he said. "The betting houses made good money tonight. Everyone bet against you. Only one person bet on you to win. Who?" Kate asked. "Me." Vexthor's smile was sharp. "I had a feeling about you. Your next fight is in 3 days. Rest, eat, heal. I want you in perfect condition. I want to see my brother. After your next victory, consider it motivation." Kate stood and walked to the bars of her cell. "If you hurt him, our deal is off." "I'll stop fighting." Vexthor studied her. "You're in no position to make threats. I'm in the only position that matters. You need me to fight. If Danny dies, I have no reason to cooperate." Kate's voice was quiet but firm. "So keep him safe and I'll keep winning your fights." For a long moment, Vexthor said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. Your brother will remain unharmed, but only as long as you continue to perform. He left. Kate sat back down and tried to rest. Her body ached in a dozen places, but she had learned to sleep through pain. It was a useful skill. Elsewhere on the station, in a research lab in the upper levels, Dr. Selenius sat at his workstation. The Eldari scientist was old, his crystalline body showing signs of wear. He had spent his life studying the various species of the galaxy, cataloging their traits and histories. Earlier that evening, a colleague had mentioned something about a human fighting in the lower-level arenas. Dr. Selenius had dismissed it at first. Humans were rare on the station, but not unheard of. But something about it bothered him, a memory old and half-forgotten. He pulled up the historical database and began searching. Humans, Earth, first contact. The records went back 4 centuries. There. A file marked with warning tags. Classification level 7. Dr. Selenius had access to level 9, so he opened it. The file was titled, Initial Contact Assessment, Species Human, Planet Earth. Status, Quarantine Recommended. Dr. Selenius began to read. The further he went, the more disturbed he became. Early merchant vessels had approached Earth with standard trading protocols. They had been met with curiosity and caution. Initial exchanges had gone well. But then pirates had attacked one of the human colony ships, expecting easy prey. The report from the Galactic Patrol who investigated the aftermath was clinical but chilling. No pirate survivors. The human ship had been breached in 3 places, losing atmosphere. Standard procedure would be for the crew to seal themselves in safe rooms and wait for rescue. The humans had not done that. They had put on emergency suits and hunted the pirates through their own dying ship. The fight had lasted for hours. When patrol arrived, they found human crew members still alive, still moving, despite injuries that should have been fatal. Despite radiation exposure, despite the cold of space. One patrol officer's testimony stood out. I've seen a lot of violent species. I've never seen anything like this. They just kept going. They didn't stop. One human had a broken leg and a punctured lung. He was still fighting. What kind of species does that? There were more reports, more incidents. Each one painted the same picture. Humans were not naturally aggressive. They preferred peace and cooperation. But when pushed to violence when protecting their own, they became something else, something that didn't know how to quit. The file included biological analysis. Humans came from what was classified as a Class 12 death world. Their planet had tried to kill them for millions of years through disease, predators, climate extremes, and natural disasters. The species that survived had evolved to be nearly impossible to kill. The term that appeared repeatedly in the reports was persistence, predator. Humans had evolved to hunt by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could run for hours, days even, without stopping. Their bodies were designed to keep moving no matter what. Dr. Selenius sat back in his chair. The quarantine had been lifted eventually, after humans proved they could integrate peacefully into galactic society. But the warning labels had remained in the classified files. Labels that no one bothered to read anymore. He thought about the human fighting in the lower levels. About what would happen if she was pushed too far. About what would happen if people had forgotten what humans truly were. Dr. Selenius made a decision. He opened a communication channel to Ambassador Kriva, the Galactic Council representative on the station. The message was marked urgent. 3 days passed. Kate fought her second match against a Vorkan warrior, smaller than the Saurian but faster and more skilled. The fight lasted longer, nearly 7 minutes, but the result was the same. Kate won by targeting the warrior's joints until movement became impossible. The crowd was larger this time. Word had spread about the human fighter. People wanted to see if her first victory had been luck. After the fight, Vexthor kept his promise. Kate was taken to see Danny. He was in a small cell, clean and relatively comfortable. His bruises were healing. When he saw Kate, he jumped up and pressed against the bars. "Kate, are you okay? They told me you were fighting. I tried to tell them you didn't have to do this, that I could work off whatever debt they think I owe, but they wouldn't listen." Kate reached through the bars and gripped his hand. "I'm fine. Just a few more fights and we're done. Both of us walk away. You shouldn't have to do this. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you. You know that." Kate squeezed his hand. "Are they treating you okay?" "Yeah. Food's not great, but they're not hurting me. Danny looked at the cuts on her arms, the bruises on her face. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. Kate spent the next 3 days preparing. The arena staff had moved her to a larger cell, almost like a small room. They brought her better food, more water, medical supplies. Vexthor wanted his investment in perfect condition for the big fight. She used the time wisely. She stretched every morning, working through old routines designed to keep muscles flexible despite damage. She ate carefully, making sure her body had the fuel it needed to heal. She rested as much as she could, though sleep came hard. At night, she thought about Jal. She had watched recordings of his previous fights that someone had left on a datapad in her cell. Watching was part of preparation. Understanding your opponent was half the battle. Jal was terrifying. 7 feet of chitinous armor, 4 arms that moved with perfect coordination, mandibles that could crush metal. He fought with overwhelming aggression, never giving ground, never showing mercy. His opponents usually lasted less than a minute. Kate watched the recordings multiple times looking for weaknesses. Everyone had weaknesses. The trick was finding them before it was too late. She noticed small things. Jal favored his right side. His lower arms were slightly slower than his upper arms. He had a pattern in his attacks, a rhythm that repeated. These observations might mean nothing, or they might be the difference between survival and death. On the morning of the fight, Vexthor came to see her. He looked pleased with himself. His 8 limbs moving in what Kate had learned was a sign of satisfaction among Krillians. Tonight's event is sold out, he said. We have over 1,000 spectators confirmed. Some are traveling from other stations just to see this fight. The betting pools are the largest in this sector's history. Kate didn't respond. She was sitting on her cot, breathing slowly, centering herself. You've done well, Vexthor continued. Better than I expected. Win or lose tonight, you've been profitable. Very profitable. And then Danny and I go free, Kate said quietly. Vexthor was silent for a moment. We should discuss that. Kate opened her eyes and looked at him. Something cold settled in her stomach. You're too valuable to let go, Vexthor said. I'm willing to extend our arrangement. Better accommodations, better pay, regular visits with your brother. You fight once a week, maybe twice. You could become wealthy, famous. That wasn't our deal. Deals change. You're intelligent. Surely you understand business. Vexthor stepped closer to the bars. Besides, what choice do you have? Your brother is still my guest. And station security is very expensive to bribe. If you try to leave or if you try to involve authorities, accidents could happen. Kate stood slowly. So you're saying no matter what happens tonight, you won't let us go? I'm saying we should discuss terms after the fight. Let's see if you survive first. Vexthor smiled. Jal is very excited to face you. He's killed every opponent for the past year. He finds it disappointing when they die too quickly. Vexthor left. Kate sat back down. She had suspected this might happen. Greed always won out over honor in people like Vexthor, but hearing it confirmed was different. She would have to find another way out. But first she had to survive tonight. Elsewhere on the station, Marcus Webb was making his final preparations. He had spent days mapping the lower levels, identifying guard positions, locating where prisoners were likely held. He had called in favors from other human workers on the station, people who owed him or simply wanted to help one of their own. Marcus knew he couldn't stop the fight. Too many people were involved, too much money at stake, but he could be ready for what came after. He had a ship waiting in a private dock. He had emergency supplies. He had a plan. He just needed Kate to survive long enough for the plan to matter. Dr. Selenius had spent the past week trying to get someone to listen. He had sent reports to Ambassador Kriva, to station security, to anyone who might care that a human was being forced to fight. The responses had been disappointing. Station security claimed they had no evidence of illegal activity. The fighting ring operated in a legal gray area, and as long as participants were technically volunteers, there was nothing they could do. Ambassador Kriva had promised to look into it, but seemed more concerned with not causing diplomatic incidents. Dr. Selenius had shown them the historical files, the warnings about humans, the classification as persistence predators, the old reports about what happened when humans were cornered or threatened. No one seemed to understand the danger, or perhaps they simply didn't believe the old records. Humans had been part of galactic society for centuries now. They seemed peaceful enough. Those old warnings were probably exaggerated. Dr. Selenius knew better. He had read the reports carefully. He understood what humans were capable of. Tonight's fight would either prove him right or prove him a fool. He decided to attend the fight himself. If something went wrong, if his fears were justified, he needed to be there to witness it. As evening approached, the arena began to fill. The crowd was larger than usual, a mixture of regular attendees and curious newcomers who had heard about the human fighter. The betting stations were overwhelmed with activity. Most bets were on Jal. A few optimists bet on Kate. No one bet on a draw. In the holding area beneath the arena, Kate could hear the crowd gathering above. The noise was like thunder, building and building. She sat quietly, controlling her breathing, preparing her mind. A guard approached her cell. Time to move. Kate stood. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the ache in her muscles, the tightness in her joints. Her body was tired. She had fought 4 major fights in 2 weeks. She was carrying accumulated damage that hadn't fully healed. But she was still functional, still capable. That was all that mattered. The guard led her down a corridor she hadn't seen before. They passed other cells, other fighters. Everyone was quiet. They all knew what tonight meant. At the end of the corridor was a heavy door. The guard opened it. Beyond was another holding area, larger than the previous one. And in a cell across from where Kate would wait, she saw Jal for the first time in person. He was bigger than she expected. The recordings hadn't captured his full size. His chitinous armor gleamed under the lights. His forearms moved restlessly as if eager to begin. His compound eyes tracked her as she entered. Kate walked to her cell without looking at him again. She sat down and closed her eyes. Human. Jal's voice was like gravel grinding together. He spoke in rough standard. You have done well to reach this point, but this is where your victories end. Kate didn't respond. I have killed 17 opponents in this arena. Jal continued. Some were strong. Some were fast. All of them died. You will die too, but if you fight well, I will make it quick. Kate opened her eyes and looked at him. I'm not here to die. I'm here to win. Jal made a sound that might have been laughter. Confidence. Good, it makes the fight more interesting. Time passed slowly. Kate could hear the crowd growing louder, more excited. Announcers were building up the fight, describing the competitors, showing recordings of their previous victories. Kate thought about Danny, about getting him out of here, about keeping him safe. That was what mattered. Everything else was secondary. She thought about her training back on Earth, the gym where she had learned to fight. Her instructor's voice, pain is just information. Your body will tell you when something is broken. Until then, you can keep moving, always keep moving. She had lived by that philosophy for years. It had never failed her. Tonight would be the ultimate test. A guard came to Jal's cell first. The champion stood, stretching his forearms. He looked eager, ready. This was what he lived for. Then a guard came for Kate. She stood and followed him up the ramp toward the arena. The noise hit her like a physical force. Over 1,000 voices screaming and cheering. The lights were blinding. Kate stepped into the ring. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered for her. Others booed. Everyone was excited. She scanned the crowd looking for familiar faces. She spotted Dr. Selenius sitting in the upper levels, his crystalline body catching the light. Near the back, she thought she saw Marcus Webb, though she couldn't be sure. In his private box, Vexthor leaned forward, all his attention focused on the ring. This fight would make him wealthy beyond his dreams. The betting revenue alone was staggering. On the opposite side of the ring, Jal entered. The crowd erupted. They loved their champion. They chanted his name, a sound like thunder. Jal raised all 4 arms and the crowd screamed louder. Then he lowered his arms and looked across the ring at Kate. Even from this distance, she could see the hunger in his compound eyes. An announcer's voice boomed over the speakers, introducing both fighters, listing their records, building the tension. Kate barely heard it. She was focused on Jal, on reading his body language, on preparing for what was coming. The announcer finished. A moment of silence fell over the arena, brief and electric. Then the bell rang. Jal moved forward immediately, not charging but advancing steadily, all 4 arms raised and ready. Kate moved to her right, circling, keeping distance between them. The crowd was already screaming. This was what they had paid to see. The unstoppable champion against the impossible human. Jal struck first, his upper right arm lashing out faster than Kate expected. She blocked but felt the impact jar her entire arm. His strength was enormous. He followed with his lower left arm, then his upper left, then his lower. The fight continued. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Kate and Jal traded blows in a brutal dance that had no clear pattern anymore. This wasn't like the other fights. This was raw, desperate combat. Kate's strategy was simple now. She couldn't overpower Jal. She couldn't outreach him, but she could outlast him. Every species had limits. Even champions got tired. Even armor had weak points. She targeted his damaged arm joints repeatedly, strike after strike to the same spots. The damage accumulated. Jal's lower right arm was nearly useless now. His lower left was weakening, but the price was high. Kate's broken ribs made every breath painful. Her left eye was swelling shut from a glancing blow. Blood ran from her split lip. Her knuckles were torn and bleeding. The crowd had gone quiet. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something else. Something harder to watch. Two beings pushing themselves past reasonable limits, past what should have been possible. Jal charged again, using his two good arms to rain down blows. Kate blocked some, took others. One caught her in the temple. Her vision blurred. For a moment she felt her legs weaken. Then something kicked in, something primal. Her body flooded with adrenaline and endorphins. The pain receded to a distant thing. Her vision cleared. She found herself still standing, still moving. This was what humans did. This was what they had evolved to do. Keep going. Keep moving. Don't stop until the prey collapses or the predator gives up. Don't stop. Kate stopped defending. She pressed forward, accepting hits to deliver hits. She struck Jal's damaged joints again and again. His lower right arm hung completely limp now. His lower left was barely functional. Jal's strikes were slowing. He was tiring. His breathing had become labored. In his entire career, no fight had lasted this long. His body wasn't built for endurance. It was built for quick, overwhelming victories. Kate's body was built differently. Built for the long hunt. Built to keep moving even when injured. Built to chase prey across endless miles until the prey simply couldn't run anymore. She saw the moment when Jal realized he was in trouble. His compound eyes showed something that might have been fear. He had never feared an opponent before. He tried to create distance, backing away. Kate followed. She didn't let him rest. Every time he tried to recover, she pressed forward. Small strikes, constant pressure, never stopping. The crowd was murmuring now. Some were leaving. This wasn't what they had paid for. This was disturbing, unnatural. The human should have fallen long ago. In his box, Vexthor stood frozen. His plans were crumbling. If the human won, if she actually defeated Jal, everything changed. She would become too famous to control, too valuable to risk, and people would ask questions about why she had been fighting in the first place. Dr. Selenius was recording everything on his data pad. This needed to be documented. The galaxy needed to see what happened when you forgot what humans were, when you treated them like entertainment instead of the dangerous species they truly were. Kate caught Jal's upper left arm. It was a risky move, but she was past caring about risk. She twisted, using leverage and his own strength against him. She heard the joint crack. Jal screamed. The sound was horrible, echoing through the now quiet arena. He pulled away, but Kate held on. She twisted harder. The arm broke. 3 of Jal's 4 arms were now damaged or useless. He had one good arm left, against a human who refused to stop. He struck at her with his remaining arm, putting all his desperation into the blow. It caught Kate in the chest, right over her broken ribs. The pain was blinding. She felt herself falling. Kate hit the ground hard. Her vision went dark at the edges. She couldn't breathe. Every attempt to draw air sent agony through her chest. Jal stood over her, swaying. He raised his one good arm for a finishing blow. Kate's hand shot out and grabbed his ankle. She pulled, using the last of her strength. Jal, already off balance from exhaustion and injury, fell. Kate forced herself up. Her body was screaming at her to stop, to rest, to give up. But giving up wasn't in her programming. She crawled onto Jal's back. Her arm wrapped around his neck, finding the vulnerable spot between his armored plates. She squeezed. Blood from her torn knuckles dripped onto his armor. Jal thrashed, but he was exhausted, broken. His movements grew weaker. Kate held on. She had trained for this. She knew exactly how much pressure to apply, exactly how long it took. She counted in her head. 10 seconds. 20, 30. Jal stopped moving. Kate held the choke for 2 more seconds, making sure. Then she released him and rolled off his back. She lay on the ground, staring up at the lights, trying to remember how to breathe. The arena was completely silent. Over 1,000 beings and not one made a sound. Kate forced herself to stand. It took 3 attempts. Her legs shook. Blood covered her face, her arms, her chest. But she was standing. And Jal wasn't. She looked up at Vexthor's box. The Krillian was staring at her, all 8 limbs rigid with shock. Kate waited for him to declare her the winner. To honor their agreement, even though she knew he wouldn't. Vexthor made a gesture. The arena's screens went dark. Guards began moving toward the ring entrance. Kate understood immediately. He wasn't going to let her leave. She had just defeated his champion, destroyed his most valuable asset, and she had done it in front of 1,000 witnesses who would spread the story across the station. She was too dangerous to release now. Too unpredictable. Vexthor would have her detained, maybe drugged, forced to fight under chemical control, or maybe he would just kill her and dispose of the evidence. The guards entered the ring. 6 of them armed with shock weapons. They spread out, surrounding her. Kate looked at them. She was exhausted, injured, barely able to stand. But Danny was still being held somewhere in this complex, and these guards were between her and her brother. Something changed in Kate's expression. The careful control she had maintained throughout all her fights slipped. What replaced it was something raw and primal. The guards saw it. Several of them took involuntary steps backward. "Stand down," one of them said, his voice uncertain. "You're coming with us." Kate's response was wordless. She moved forward. The first guard fired his shock weapon. The blast hit Kate's center mass. She stumbled but didn't fall. The weapon was designed to incapacitate standard species neurologies. Human neurology was different. More redundant, more resistant. Kate kept moving. The guard fired again, and again.
Kate finally went to one knee.
But she was still conscious, still aware. 3 more guards fired. Kate felt her body seizing, muscles locking. But some part of her was still moving, still fighting against the electrical current coursing through her. In the crowd, Dr. Selenius was on his feet, shouting, "Stop! You'll kill her!" But his voice was lost in the chaos. People were panicking now. Some were trying to leave. Others were frozen, watching in horror. This had gone beyond entertainment. This had become something else entirely. Marcus Webb was already moving. He triggered the emergency protocol he had set up. Station alarms began blaring. Emergency bulkheads started closing throughout the lower levels. His team was moving toward the holding cells where Danny was kept. In the ring, Kate finally collapsed. The repeated shock blasts had done what injuries couldn't. She lay on the ground, her body twitching, but she was still trying to get up. Still trying to move. The guards approached cautiously. One reached down to restrain her. Kate's hand shot out, faster than should have been possible in her condition. She grabbed his wrist and twisted. The guard screamed. Another guard moved in. Kate used the first guard as leverage, pulling herself up. Her movements were uncoordinated, desperate, but effective. She struck with her elbow, caught the second guard in his throat. He went down gasping. The remaining guards backed away. They looked at each other, uncertainty clear on their faces. They had never seen anything like this. Species were supposed to submit when overwhelmed, when injured, when defeated. Humans didn't have that instinct. The ability to know when to quit had been bred out of them long ago on the killing fields of Earth. Quitting meant death. So they didn't quit. They kept fighting until they physically couldn't move anymore. Kate stood swaying in the center of the ring. Blood covered her. Her eyes were barely focusing. But she was standing. Vexthor was shouting orders from his box, but the guards weren't responding. They were too shocked, too frightened. This wasn't what they signed up for. Ambassador Kriva burst into Vexthor's box, accompanied by station security officers. Real security, not corrupt guards on Vexthor's payroll. Dr. Selenius had finally gotten someone to listen. "This operation is shut down," Kriva announced, her avian features sharp with anger. "Everyone in this arena is detained pending investigation." Vexthor started to protest, but security officers were already restraining him. His 8 limbs flailed uselessly. In the ring, Kate finally saw Marcus Webb. He was running toward her, shouting her name. Behind him was Danny, limping but alive. Kate tried to walk toward them. Her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, then to her hands. Her vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from all sides. Danny reached her first. He dropped to his knees beside her. Kate, I'm okay. I'm safe. You can stop now. You can rest. Kate looked at him. She saw that he was unharmed, saw that he was safe. The thing driving her forward, the desperate need to protect her brother, finally released its grip. She collapsed. Kate woke slowly. The medical facility was quiet, lit by soft lights that didn't hurt her eyes. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Every muscle in her body screamed in protest. Easy, a voice said. Danny was sitting beside her bed, looking tired but relieved. You've been out for 2 days. Kate's throat was dry. Danny held a cup of water to her lips and she drank carefully. You're okay? Her voice was rough, barely a whisper. I'm fine, thanks to you. Danny's eyes were red. Kate, you could have died. Multiple times, but I didn't. Kate managed a weak smile. We're both here. That's what matters. A doctor entered, a tall insectoid being with multiple eyes. She examined Kate with instruments that beeped and hummed. Remarkable, the doctor said. Your injuries are healing faster than any species I've treated. Broken ribs that should take weeks are already knitting. Your bruises are fading. I've added extensive notes to your medical file. When can I leave? Kate asked. Another week at minimum. You need rest. Your body may heal quickly, but you still need time. The doctor adjusted something on a monitor. You have visitors waiting. Ambassador Kriva and Dr. Selenius, are you well enough to speak with them? Kate nodded. The doctor left. A moment later, Ambassador Kriva entered, followed by the crystalline form of Dr. Selenius. Marcus Webb came in behind them. Kriva's avian features were set in an expression Kate couldn't quite read. Guilt, maybe, or concern. Ms. Morrison, I owe you an apology. Several apologies, in fact. I should have acted sooner when Dr. Selenius brought this situation to my attention. What happened to Vex Thor? Kate asked. Arrested along with his entire organization. The fighting ring has been shut down. All the fighters have been released and offered compensation. Kriva moved closer to the bed. The Galactic Council is treating this as a serious diplomatic incident. What was done to you was slavery, plain and simple. It violated a dozen treaties. Good, Kate said quietly. Dr. Selenius spoke up. The footage from your fights has spread across the station. And beyond, I'm afraid. People are talking about the human who defeated Jal, the human who kept fighting despite injuries that should have killed her. Great, Kate muttered. Just what I wanted. Fame. It's more than that, Dr. Selenius said gently. You've reminded the galaxy what humans are, what you're capable of. For centuries, we've lived alongside your species without really understanding you. We forgot the warnings from first contact. We forgot why Earth was quarantined. Kate looked at him. Why was Earth quarantined? Because you scared us, Dr. Selenius said simply. Not because you were aggressive, but because you were survivors. Because you came from a world that tried to kill you every day for millions of years. And you not only survived, you thrived. Because when early pirates attacked human ships, they found that humans don't stop fighting. Even when they should be dead, they keep moving, keep fighting. He brought up a holographic display from his datapad. Old records appeared, texts and images from centuries ago. These are the first contact reports. Listen to this testimony from a Galactic Patrol officer who investigated a pirate attack on a human colony ship. A recorded voice played. The ship was breached in 3 places. Total hull failure. No atmosphere. The humans should have sealed themselves in safe rooms and waited for rescue. Instead, they suited up and hunted the pirates through their own dying ship. We found them 3 hours after the breach, still alive, still functional. Multiple injuries, radiation exposure, prolonged vacuum exposure. They were still conscious, still fighting. I've never seen anything like it in 40 years of service. The recording ended. Kate was quiet for a moment. We do what we have to do to survive. That's exactly what frightened us, Kriva said. Your species doesn't have natural armor. You don't have venom or claws or immense strength, but you have something more dangerous. You don't know when to quit. Your biology won't let you quit. You're built to keep going until you succeed or until you're physically incapable of movement. Kate thought about the fights, about pushing through pain and exhaustion, about the moment in the ring when her body should have given up but didn't, about the strange clarity that came when adrenaline kicked and in pain became distant. I was holding back, she said quietly. Everyone in the room stared at her. What? Kriva's voice was sharp. Kate met her eyes. In the fights. I fought just hard enough to win. I needed to understand the system, needed to keep Danny safe, needed information. If I'd fought the way I was actually trained, the way humans train each other when it's serious, those fights would have been over in seconds. You're saying what we saw wasn't your full capability, Dr. Selenius said slowly. I'm saying I was being careful, trying not to permanently injure anyone, trying not to scare people. Kate shifted in bed, wincing at the movement, until the end. When Vexthor sent those guards, when I realized he wasn't going to let us go, that's when I stopped being careful. The room was very quiet. Marcus spoke for the first time. She's right. I've seen human military training. We learn to fight in ways that most species can't comprehend. We learn to keep fighting with broken bones, with missing limbs, with injuries that would send any other species into shock. It's not because we're better. It's because we had to be that way to survive on Earth. Kriva looked shaken. The Council needs to know this. All of this. She turned to Dr. Selenius. Your report. The historical records. They need to be declassified and distributed. Already done, Dr. Selenius said. As of this morning, all first contact records regarding humans are available in the public database. Anyone working with humans will have access to the information. Good, Kriva said firmly. People need to understand. Not to fear humans, but to respect them. To understand what they are. Kate was starting to feel tired again. The conversation was taking more energy than she had. Danny noticed and stood. She needs to rest. You can come back later, Kriva nodded. Of course. Ms. Morrison, you and your brother are free to leave the station whenever you're ready. All charges have been cleared, and the Council is offering substantial compensation for what you endured. I just want to go home, Kate said quietly. We'll arrange transport as soon as you're medically cleared. Kriva hesitated at the door. What you did, what you survived, it will change things. People will look at humans differently now. Maybe they'll think twice before forcing us to fight for their entertainment, Kate said. Maybe, Kriva agreed. Maybe they'll remember to be careful. They left. Danny sat back down beside Kate's bed. You really were holding back? Kate nodded slowly. There are things they teach in fighting gyms on Earth. Techniques that are considered too dangerous for most competitions. Ways to permanently damage joints, to rupture organs, to cause lasting harm. I didn't use any of that. I just used basic submissions and strikes. Why are you telling them this? Won't it make them more afraid of us? Good, Kate said quietly. Let them be afraid. Not terrified, just careful, respectful. Maybe then they won't forget what we are. Maybe then no one else will end up in a situation like this. Over the next week, the story spread throughout the galaxy. News networks picked it up. The footage from the arena was analyzed by military strategists and civilian commentators alike. Everyone had an opinion about the human fighter who had defeated the undefeated champion. Some called for increased restrictions on humans. Others called for better integration and understanding. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humans were not to be underestimated. Tourism to human-populated stations dropped sharply. Some aliens were nervous about being around humans now. Others were fascinated, approaching with a new wariness and respect. Human merchants found that negotiations suddenly became easier. No one wanted to push a human too far. No one wanted to test whether the stories were true. In the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was convened. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the implications of what had happened on Nexus Station 7. Ambassador Kriva presented the evidence. The historical records. The medical reports on Kate's injuries and recovery. The testimony from the arena staff about her performance. Dr. Selenius was called to testify. He explained the concept of persistence predators, of humans evolving to hunt by outlasting their prey. He showed comparative data on human endurance versus other species. The numbers were staggering. Humans can run for hours, he explained. Most species tire after minutes. Humans can function with injuries that would incapacitate others. Their pain tolerance is exceptional. Their healing rates are remarkable. And most importantly, they have an almost complete absence of the submission response that most species possess. What does that mean? A council member asked. It means when most species are defeated, they submit. They accept defeat and stop fighting. It's a survival mechanism. Humans don't have that mechanism. When defeated, when injured, when exhausted, they keep fighting. Their biology doesn't give them the option to quit. The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. "What are you proposing?" Kriva asked the assembled representatives. A Krillian representative stood. "We need new protocols. Not a quarantine, but guidelines for interaction with humans. Warnings about their capabilities. Education about their nature." An Eldari representative agreed. The old files should remain public. 6 weeks after leaving Nexus Station 7, Kate stood in the training gym where she had first learned to fight. The familiar smell of sweat and floor mats brought back memories. Her instructor, an old man named Pete who had taught her everything, watched her from across the room. "You look different," Pete said. "Harder somehow." Kate touched her ribs, which had finally healed completely. "I went through something. Out in space, I saw the news reports. Everyone did." Pete walked closer. "The human fighter who beat the unbeatable champion, who fought 6 guards while half dead from injuries. That was you, wasn't it?" Kate nodded slowly. "They took Danny. They made me fight. I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," Pete said. "You chose to protect your brother. You chose to survive. You chose to keep fighting when anyone else would have quit." He paused. "I taught you well. But what you did out there, that wasn't just training. That was something deeper." "I didn't know I had it in me," Kate admitted. "Until I had to. Until there was no other option. That's what humans do. We find what we need when we need it. We've been doing it for millions of years." Pete gestured around the gym. "This place, these techniques I teach, they're nothing compared to what your ancestors survived. Predators, disease, starvation, weather that could kill you in minutes. We survived all of it by refusing to quit." Kate looked around the gym. Students were training, practicing strikes and holds. They looked young, eager. None of them had been tested the way she had been tested. "What are you going to do now?" Pete asked. "I don't know. The compensation money means I don't have to work. Danny's enrolled in university. He's going to study xenobiology, wants to understand all the species out there." Kate smiled slightly. "After everything, he's still fascinated by aliens. And you?" "I've been getting messages. Job offers. Security companies want to hire me. Military consultants want my input on training programs. News networks want interviews." Kate shook her head. "I'm not interested in any of it. I just want to be normal again." "You can't go back to normal," Pete said gently. "Not after what you've been through. Not after what you've shown the galaxy. You're famous now. Infamous, maybe. The human who reminded everyone why they should be careful around us." Kate knew he was right. Even here on Earth, people recognized her. Some approached with admiration. Others with wariness. She had become a symbol of something, whether she wanted it or not. "There's something else," Pete said. "I've been contacted by the government. They want to develop new training programs based on what happened to you. They want to prepare humans for situations where they might face species that underestimate us. They asked if I would help, and they asked if you would help." Kate considered it. Teaching others to survive. Making sure no human ended up helpless and exploited like she had been. It had a certain appeal. "I'll think about it," she said. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the effects of Kate's fights continued to ripple outward. On stations and planets throughout known space, policies were changing. Treatment of humans became more careful, more respectful. Criminal organizations that had targeted humans as easy marks found their operations suddenly more difficult. Word spread quickly. Humans were persistence predators. They didn't submit. They didn't quit. Cross them at your own risk. On Nexus Station 7, Marcus Webb sat in his new office. His title was officially Security Consultant for Human Affairs, but his real job was broader than that. He was the person species came to when they needed to understand humans, when they needed advice on how to work with humans, when they needed to avoid the mistakes that Vexthor had made. Today he was meeting with a Krillian business owner who wanted to hire human workers for her shipping company. She sat nervously in the chair across from his desk. "I want to do this right," she said. "I've read the reports. I've seen what happened here. I don't want to make those mistakes." Marcus nodded approvingly. "That's a good start. Understanding that humans need to be treated with respect. Here's what you need to know." He pulled up a display showing the new protocols that had been established. Humans value fairness and clear communication. If you make an agreement, stick to it. If you try to change terms or exploit them, they will react badly. Humans are also intensely loyal to family and friends. Never threaten a human's loved ones. That's what caused the situation with Kate Morrison. The Krillian listened carefully, making notes. What about working conditions? Humans can work long hours, but they need rest. They need regular meals. They need social interaction. Treat them like valued employees, not like disposable resources. Marcus leaned forward. Here's the thing you really need to understand. Humans are cooperative by nature. We want to work with others. We want to build things together. But if we're threatened, if we're cornered, if we're pushed too far, we become something else. Something that won't stop until the threat is eliminated or we're dead. That's not aggression. That's survival instinct from millions of years of evolution. I understand, the Krillian said. Treat them well and they'll be excellent workers. Treat them badly and face consequences. Exactly. Marcus handed her a data chip. This contains recommended employment practices, communication guidelines, and emergency protocols. Study it carefully, and if you have questions, contact me. The Krillian took the chip gratefully and left. Marcus sat back in his chair. This was his life now. Building bridges, preventing misunderstandings, making sure Kate's sacrifice meant something. In the Galactic Council archives, Dr. Selenius was working on a comprehensive study of humanity, not just their biology and history, but their culture and psychology. He wanted to create a resource that would help other species understand humans on a deeper level. He had interviewed Kate extensively before she left the station. Her insights had been invaluable. She had explained things about human nature that even most humans didn't consciously understand. One conversation stood out in his memory. He had asked her why humans kept fighting even when injured. It's not that we don't feel pain, Kate had explained. We feel it just as much as anyone. But we've learned to separate pain from function. Pain is information. It tells us what's wrong. But it doesn't have to stop us from moving. We can acknowledge the pain and keep going anyway. That's what our ancestors did when a broken leg meant death unless you kept moving. They moved. They survived. And they passed that ability down to us. Dr. Selenius included that quote in his study. It captured something essential about humanity, the ability to experience suffering and continue functioning despite it. Most species would call that irrational. Humans called it survival. Ambassador Kriva was presenting to the full Galactic Council. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds. The topic was simple but crucial. Updated protocols for interaction with Deathworld species, with particular focus on humans. We allowed ourselves to forget, Kriva said, her voice carrying through the chamber. 4 centuries ago, when we first encountered humans, we documented their capabilities. We noted their exceptional endurance, their pain tolerance, their refusal to submit. We quarantined their world, not because they were aggressive, but because we were frightened of what they could do. She brought up holographic displays showing the old reports, the pirate attacks, the patrol testimonies, the scientific analyses of human biology. Then we lifted the quarantine. We welcomed them into galactic society. And slowly, over generations, we forgot why we had been cautious. We began to see them as just another species, weaker than some, less advanced than others. We forgot what they truly were. The displays changed, showing footage from Kate's fights. The council members watched in silence as she defeated opponent after opponent, as she stood over the fallen Jal, as she continued fighting even when shocked by multiple weapons. This is what happens when we forget, Kriva said. One human exploited and cornered, defeated our strongest fighters and reminded us what humanity is. She wasn't even using her full capability. She was, in her own words, being careful. Imagine what would happen if humans stopped being careful. The council chamber was absolutely quiet. I'm not proposing we fear humans, Kriva continued. I'm proposing we respect them. We remember what they are. We treat them with the caution their nature deserves. And we make sure this information is never forgotten again. The council voted on her proposals. Mandatory education about Deathworld species for all officials. Updated warnings in the database. Regular reviews to ensure the information remained current and accessible. Everything passed unanimously. No one wanted to repeat the mistakes that had been made. Back on Earth, 3 months after returning home, Kate made her decision. She would help develop the new training programs, not to make humans more dangerous, but to make them more prepared, to make sure that if they ever found themselves in a situation like hers, they would know what to do. She stood in a government facility, addressing a room full of trainers and officials. They wanted to know what she had learned, what she could teach. "The most important thing I learned," Kate said, "is that we're stronger than we think, not just physically, mentally. When we're pushed to the edge, when everything is on the line, we find capabilities we didn't know we had. Our ancestors survived impossible odds. That ability is still in us. It's always been in us.